All right, so you wanted to know more about what's been going on in those Seattle City Council meetings.
We're talking those March meetings,
All
right?
right.
So we dug through the minutes from March 5th, 19th, and 26th.
Okay.
And let me tell you, there's some interesting stuff in there. Get this, we're talking Women's History Month, ecological thinning.
Ecological thinning.
Yeah, ecological thinning.
Now, that's not something you hear every day.
Right.
Sounds like we're going to uncover some hidden gems in these minutes.
Yeah, we really are. And it's amazing. These minutes might seem kind of dry at first, but they really give us a look into the decisions that shape the city every day.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a record of how things get done, the priorities, the debates, everything. Think of it like a backstage past how the city actually operates.
I like that, a backstage pass.
Yeah.
Okay, so March 5th, the meeting starts off with a proclamation for Women's History Month, presented by Councilmember Moore.
Okay.
And Crystal Guerrero, the co-chair of the Seattle Women's Commission, was even there. Which got me thinking, these proclamations, they can seem kind of symbolic, right?
Right.
But they actually say a lot about what a city values, don't they?
Absolutely. They are a way for the city council to formally acknowledge and celebrate something, but it's more than just that. These proclamations can actually signal to city departments where to focus their efforts, or they can even influence funding decisions down the line.
That's a really good point. Okay, switching gears completely. The March 5th meeting also dealt with this Cedar River Watershed Ordinance.
Ah, yes, the Cedar River Watershed Ordinance.
So this allowed for like 5 years of ecological thinning in parts of the Cedar River watershed.
Right.
And this is directly tied to the city's water supply.
It is. The Cedar River watershed is where a significant portion of Seattle's drinking water comes from.
Right.
So maintaining a healthy watershed is absolutely essential.
That's fascinating. So what does ecological thinning actually entail?
So ecological thinning, it's a method of forest management.
Okay.
And instead of like large-scale tree removal, they selectively thin out trees and vegetation.
Oh, interesting.
The idea is to improve the overall health of the forest, reduce the risk of wildfires, which can severely impact water quality, and it can even enhance water flow.
Wow. So it's really interesting how something like what seemed like a small detail in these minutes
Yeah.
connects to something as vital as Seattle's water supply.
Yeah, it really highlights how interconnected these issues are. Decisions about land management, even miles outside of the city center, can have a ripple effect.
It really makes you realize how important these meetings are.
Mm.
Okay, so moving on to the March 19th meeting.
This one was a whirlwind.
Really?
Yeah, appointments, claims, resolutions, you name it, they covered it.
Wow, that's a lot.
I know, right? It really makes you appreciate all the different issues that the city council has to deal with.
It does, it does. And speaking of a lot of issues, one thing that jumped out at me was just the sheer number of appointments to all these different boards and commissions.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking arts, libraries, housing. It goes on and on.
So many appointments.
Yeah, and these boards and commissions, they're where a lot of the detailed work happens, you know?
Right, behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, but it's important work. Take the Historic Preservation Board, for example.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. What do they do again?
So they're the ones who are tasked with preserving Seattle's historical, architectural, and cultural heritage.
Wow, big job.
It is a big job. They review development proposals, they decide which buildings get that landmark status, and they even work to educate the public about historic preservation.
So they have a really direct impact on how the city looks and feels.
Exactly.
That's so cool. It's like they're guardians of Seattle's history.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, we saw those appointments to the Pike Place Market Historical Commission.
Yes.
Another example. But this one's hyper-focused on, one of Seattle's most iconic landmarks.
Right.
They're the ones making sure that any changes to Pike Place Market respect its history.
That's so important. It makes you realize how much citizen input actually goes into shaping the city.
It really does.
Speaking of citizen input, and I have to admit, this one kind of puzzled me a little bit.
Okay.
The minutes mentioned Councilmember Moore being excused from the meeting, but then they were present for committee votes. So how does that work?
Good catch. So council members can actually participate in those committee meetings remotely,
Oh, okay.
even if they can't be there in person for the full council meeting.
That makes sense.
So it just goes to show how important those committees are. They often do a lot of the groundwork for the decisions that are made during those full council meetings.
So even when it seems like a council member is absent, they still might be involved.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that there's often more going on than we see on the surface.
Very true. Now let's talk about the budget for a minute.
Okay.
It seems like budget discussions come up in pretty much every meeting.
Well, they kind of have to, right?
Right.
The budget underpins everything that the council does.
That's true.
And on March 19th, they adopted the statements of legislative intent for the 2024 budget.
Okay.
And this is important because it's not just about the numbers.
Right.
It's about the council taking their vision for the city and turning it into actual financial decisions.
It's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Yep.
What stood out to you in these budget discussions?
Well, one of the key areas of focus was affordable housing.
Of course, that's a big one in Seattle.
Huge. And the council put a significant portion of the budget towards developing new affordable housing units and also preserving the ones that already exist.
That makes sense. And that actually reminds me, remember we saw that appointment to the Pacific Hospital Preservation and Development Authority.
Yes.
Do you think that could be part of a strategy to repurpose existing structures for affordable housing?
Oh, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
definitely possible. That's a common strategy that cities use to address housing needs. It's often more sustainable and cost-effective than new construction.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's really interesting how these meetings bring together all these different things like budget stuff and historical preservation. You wouldn't think they'd be related.
Right. It shows how much the council's decisions actually affect the city.
Right.
Like you said, it's not always about just spending money.
Right.
Sometimes it's about attracting it, too. Remember those grant approvals we saw in the March 26 minutes?
Oh, yeah, the grant. What was the
Huh?
deal with those again?
Well, grants are a really important way that a lot of city initiatives get funded.
Okay.
And these specific grants were for a bunch of different things. Arts and culture, youth services, even some sustainability projects.
Sustainability, huh? That seems to be a recurring theme in these meetings. We talked about the Cedar River Watershed Ordinance and now these grants.
Yeah, definitely seems to be a priority for the city.
Yeah.
Seattle's been pushing for a lot more green initiatives lately,
Makes sense.
promoting renewable energy, reducing carbon emissions, that kind of thing. So these grants, who knows, they could be funding anything from community gardens to energy-efficient upgrades to public buildings. It's really interesting.
Makes you wonder what else they're doing that we don't even see in the minutes.
Right. This is just a little peek behind the curtain.
Exactly. So if someone's listening to this and they want to find out more, what's the best way for them to get more involved or learn more about what's going on in these meetings?
Well, the great thing is that all these meetings are open to the public.
Oh, they are?
Yep. You can find the schedule online, watch the live streams. You can even sign up for email alerts about certain topics you're interested in.
Wow, so you can really follow along.
Exactly.
And if you really want to get involved, you can even go to a meeting and give a public testimony, right?
Exactly. Never underestimate the power of making your voice heard.
That's a great point. Well, there you have it. Another deep dive complete. From ecological thinning to city budgets, we really covered it all.
It was fun.
It was. And we started with a simple question, what goes on in these meetings? And we ended up uncovering so much more, a whole bunch of decisions, priorities, even a glimpse into the future of Seattle. What about you? What stood out to you the most?